Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I would like to welcome everyone to NIMS presentation on From Cordoba to Chicago, an interview on social medicine in Islam, interview with the CEO of the first Muslim-operated safety net hospital in Islam in America, inside Chicago, Dr. Jawad Shah. Before we get started, I would like to introduce you to the NIMS Executive Director, Sister Alia Herzala.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I will start inshallah with reading some ayat from Surah Sad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أم نجعل الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات كالمفسدين في الأرض أم نجعل المتقين كالفجار كتاب أنزلناه إليك مبارك ليدبروا آياته وليتذكر أولو الألباب صدق الله العظيم. I want to thank you for attending, and a special thanks to Dr. Jawad for accepting the invitation. And I want to introduce the organization, NIMS, the Nagami Institute of Islamic Medicine and Science, which was formerly known as the International Institute of Islamic Medicine. The founder of the organization is Dr. Nagami Hussein. May Allah have mercy on his soul and accept from him all his good deeds. Through our library exhibition, events, webinars, health fair, and the field trips to the schools and colleges, we share our knowledge to create experience that produces a better understanding of the Islamic ethos and the contributions of Muslims to medicine and other sciences. And we are very glad to announce that, inshallah, soon we will announce about the grand opening of the expansion of the museum, which is only about the Quran, rare pieces of Quran and manuscripts. And inshallah soon we will announce about that. It's almost done, and we will announce it as soon as we can. Again, I want to thank you, and inshallah you will enjoy the interview with Dr. Jawad. Thank you, and jazakum Allah khair.
Jazakallah, Sister Alia, the Executive Director of Nagami Institute of Islamic Medical Sciences. My name is Dr. Shahabuddin. I am the Vice President of NIMS. I'm very excited about today's interview with Dr. Jawad Shah. A lot of the Chicago community has been watching Mercy kind of transition towards Insight, which is just acquired Mercy, the hospital formerly known as Mercy Hospital. It's one of the most iconic hospitals in the city of Chicago. It's at the nose, pretty much right when you enter the city, you see Mercy Hospital. So it was a big milestone for our community to hear that there was Muslims involved in acquiring this, especially in that area where there is a lack of healthcare. So this was a dream come true for our community. And I do appreciate, Dr. Jawad Shah, your courage to make it come to being. We appreciate your beginning, and there's a lot of work. Hopefully you can work hard to make this institution a role model for other institutions to providing service above self. I'm going to get started and introduce Dr. Jawad Shah's bio. He studied at McGill University in Montreal at the University of Manitoba prior to completing his medical school at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, Canada, where he is also raised. He began his PhD work in psychoneuroimmunology prior to embarking on specialty training in neurosurgery. He completed subspecialty fellowship training in skull-based neurosurgery at the University of Arkansas. His areas of specialty include brainstem injury, vascular neurosurgery, brain tumors, complex spine, and neuromodulation. He currently practices at McLaren, Hurley, and Genesis Hospital. He's involved in extensive research projects, including clinical, patent work, biological, mechanical, electrical, product development, industry-sponsored studies, and theoretical philosophy, among other areas. He's a faculty member at the Michigan State University School of Medicine. He's also co-director of the Center for Cognition and Neuroethics, jointly administered by the University of Michigan and Insight. Dr. Shah has lived in Flint, Michigan with his wife and children since the fall of 2003. When he is not working, he is constantly thinking of ways to better the community. He also enjoys snowboarding, fishing, scuba diving, traveling, and reading. Dr. Shah's many efforts stem from his sincere desire to help others, and his mentality is the reason why Insight has consistently grown over the years. His vision is to selflessly give back by immersing himself in the community, and his philosophy and purposes set the tone for Insight's character and mission. In fact, the inspiration for Insight's Healing Center came as a result of Dr. Shah's generosity and vision. The first patient came in seeking help and was given it free of charge. The Healing Center was developed soon after. One of the organizations he has supported and assisted is the Sylvester Broom Empowerment Village in Flint, Michigan, where he currently serves on the board of directors. The Broom Center's goal is to invest in youths in order to empower them to become leaders. Its programs and services include a summer day camp, a Sky after-school academic program, and a School of Champions athletic program, as well as youth journalism, music, and adult literacy programs. With his guidance, the location became one of the first water distribution sites after the Flint water crisis. Another project special to him is the Chelsea Project, a medical research project involving manipulating the spinal cord in order to enable patients to move, which other hospitals refuse to take on due to the associated costs. His personal mission is to be an agent for social and economic growth in Flint through various research and education programs and nonprofit involvement. According to Dr. Shah, Insight does not allow the dollar to deter them from their initiatives for social good, medical research, and medical advancements. The overarching goal and concept behind Insight is to help patients regardless of the economic scenario, no matter where a patient is in his or her life. Insight will be there. Without further ado, Dr. Jawad Shah.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. Very nice to speak to you all, and I really very much appreciate the invitation from the wonderful leaders here in NIMS. And to address this issue, I think is a very critical one, not simply because of our position currently in Chicago and what we're involved in as a team, but I think just it's a much wider discussion, not only about Muslims and our contribution to the wider milieu of the society, but I think even more deeply speaking to people of all faith and people of all these different wonderful backgrounds, from our Christian brothers and sisters, our Jewish brothers and sisters, our Hindu brothers and sisters, people of faith, people of non-faith, people of Buddhist background. There comes a time, I think, I think a time should come in our current history and where we are as a global nation, that people come together and exude some of the most profound principles of ethics and of brotherhood and sisterhood. And that's really where I see our role. And of course, as Muslims, that is one element that I think is critical for us to bring together for the wider community. I've never seen the word Muslim or the word Islam to mean like a club. I think that it's a mentality and it's an idea that we submit towards a much higher power. And this really speaks to who we are. So I look at this project, while it's something near and dear to me as a Muslim, I see people of all backgrounds understanding the nature of the project and wanting to be involved and to deliver something special to the local community and to the city and ultimately to the country. So I was asked to speak a little bit about what our motivations were and how we came to this particular project and what do we envision is going to be happening. The term insight is the overarching term that sees over 25 or 30 different companies and divisions of work. And the idea of insight is that, when we look deeply into something, you're trying to apprehend the inner nature of something, that you then really discover its essence. And that discovery then leads to much further transformation. This is in Arabic, there's a term referring to this, which is basira, the inner nature, the inner light, the looking deeply inside oneself. And this is where this term emanated from. That if you look at the external elements of a human being, or for that matter, an institution such as ours, that if you look at the core of who that institution is, what's deep within its intentions and its heart and its ethics, then you'll have a better understanding of the reflection of that reality externally. So we see this as the true, that this project is a manifestation, or I hope an outgrowth of some elements that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put inside of us. The logo that we have in the left lower corner is the basilar circulation. It's the circulation of the brain and the brain stem that keeps us alive. Without that circulation, there is no life. That insignia now that we intend to have on the top of the hospital is a tafsir of a verse in the Quran. And this verse that is embedded within this idea of our insignia is a verse that I believe is slightly misunderstood. And it's mentioned in Surah Qaf, and it's widely quoted, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ, and that we created human beings, وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ, and we know what whispers within their souls. وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ, and we are closer to the human being than حَبْلُ الْوَرِيدِ. That has often been translated as the jugular vein. And the jugular vein was considered by anatomists as an important structure that would supply blood to different areas of the body. But the jugular vein is not as critical as one might think. One can remove the jugular vein, they can take both jugular veins, and a person can survive through the external jugulars and other veins that leave the brain. So I started to look into when was this introduced to Quranic lexicon and tafsir, and it wasn't. The earliest mention of it was around 1869 when Stanley Lane Poole, he introduced this term. And anatomists were unable to dissect the brain because they would dissolve and they didn't have formaldehyde, and so people didn't really understand the brain anatomy. So jugular vein did not fit into the meaning of this verse. And if you look at the earlier dictionaries from the 700s and 800s and so on, even prior to that time, they continuously talk about how this is not a vein, but in fact, they refer to it as an artery. Ibn Ashur in his tafsir, he mentions that this is an artery delivering blood to something, not removing it from there. Yet others comment on the idea that Hablul Warid is not two different things in the body, like the jugular vein, which has two different jugular veins, but it's a singular artery, and that it's somewhere above the clavicle. What's below the clavicle, there's other terminologies which are used, such as wadeen for the aorta. So what fulfills the criteria of something being intimately necessary for life, deeply intertwined with consciousness, that's only a singular artery and that supplies the brain? There's only one artery that falls into all of those elements, and that is the basilar artery at the beginning of the circle of Willis. The basilar artery lies on the brainstem. It's intimately involved with the reticular activating system. If you do not have a basilar, you don't have consciousness. And so the idea that perhaps this ayah is referring to something much deeper than what we see superficially, and that's what the idea of our insignia is, that look deep, deep into a human being. And now looking at the verses that connect this idea and this concept of Hablul Warid, you see the entire discussion circulates around the brainstem. The next verse says, إِذْ يَتَلَقَّى الْمُتَلَقِّيَانِ عَنِ الْيَمِينِ وَعَنِ الشِّمَالِ قَعِيدٌ. That this vessel, whatever it might be, is the bringing together of two vessels that join and become this one vessel. It's the only vessel in the body where the vessels supplying it actually are smaller than what it becomes, because it's so critical. And these two verses, these two elements come together, إِذْ يَتَلَقَّى, where the joining of the two things that join, الْمُتَلَقِّيَانِ عَنِ الْيَمِينِ وَعَنِ الشِّمَالِ قَعِيدٌ. The spiritual interpretation is one of angels. The anatomical interpretation is that two different vessels become one. And then it continues, because right at the vertebro-basilar junction, you have the hypoglossal nucleus. And you see that when someone speaks, they speak from that location, that the nerve potential leaves from the hypoglossal nucleus to the tongue. So looking deeper at this verse, it says, in speaking of that anatomy, saying, "Ma yalfidhu min qawlin illa ladayhi raqibun atid," that you don't articulate a word except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's angels are writing it down. And the verses continue talking much about what I perceive as brainstem anatomy. Now, again, this is simply a gleaning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge. It's not an attempt to put a square in a circle, but the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to us deeply, trying to have us understand His knowledge and His ability to make anecdotes, to make us understand reality. That's what I see in our insignia. Deep inside of it, these verses of the Quran are embedded. So what do we want to be? We want to be an innovative, ethical, and insightful institution that is aspirational. We endeavor to do all of these things. We're not simply here as an organization that performs medicine. Medicine is a manifestation of our deen, of who we are, such that we can deliver something beautiful to the people around us. But this is who we really are. It's not simply physical buildings and cement blocks and rooms and stethoscopes, but instead we're an institution that's built on leadership. And if you look at the people that are involved in Insight, I myself, I'm the CEO of Insight at a corporate level. Our CEO at the local level is exceptional. The COO and the CXO and all the different elements of the people that have come together to do this, you look at their incredible leadership. If you look at the best people within our organization, they don't have arrogance. They'll pick up garbage. They'll empty dumpsters. They'll cook. They will clean. They will do medicine. They will do surgeries. They will take care of patients. And this is what real leadership is. Elements of ethics and of delivering something good to people around them. All of these elements is really who I believe our humble institution is. And that's what our value is. Our attempt is that we want to provide patient care second to none. We like let people who compete, let them compete on good things. And it's our hope that we can do this, that deliver to our patients exceptional care, whether it be on the clinical level or whether it be on the experience level. That not only do we want to give them good care, but we want them to understand that we have their interests in our hearts, and that's what we want, the best possible thing for them. Our core values are, as mentioned, energy, execution, loyalty, and so on. But there's nothing I love more than love. When one loves someone or something, their behaviors don't need all sorts of ahkam and rules of fiqh to tell them how to behave. If you love your patient, you love your institution, you love each other, there'll be an automatic respect and a behavioral change that'll occur, which really reflects that. If you love your mother, you don't need some rule of fiqh to tell you that when she comes home, you take her shoes, you help her with the dishes, you take her bags from her. It's because of your love that you do all the correct things then. So for me, that's the core of all values. And as an institution that has multiple faiths, people can take that in different ways, but one can really, at the deepest level, we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we love our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this drives all of our ethics and drives all of our work. As an institution, we began in Flint, Michigan, and we acquired a 600,000 square foot building. That's where it began. And again, even in this story, it's interesting that the rest of the city and the rest of my colleagues were moving out of the city and we moved in. Somehow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened that idea in our minds that this is where the most needy patients are. And He opened the opportunity then, when that intention came into us, to have this massive footprint. I recall having 4 people when we went there, getting support from the government, people applauding what we were doing. And the amount of support that they gave allowed us to grow into that building and to make it into a full hustling and bustling center, where now we have hundreds of millions of dollars moving through, and at the same time having other campuses that are arising out of it as well. And again, this is starting from a group of essentially 4 staff and myself. This is the center, and we've grown into, and we have centers all over the state and now in Chicago, and multiple services. We've done our best to try and champion programs that are critical for the come out of that. We have multiple areas of research. such as creating a cyborg in a spinal cord injured patient where we can control the patient's legs simply with our electrical devices. And this is really meant to just give you a flavor for some of the things that we're involved in. We've championed a photocatalytic reactor, which is in our centers, that prevents the spread of COVID among our patients. It's now being marketed very rapidly all over the country, but it protects the surfaces from viruses as well as aerosolized virus. So again, we do our best to try and push fields of medicine, whether it's research or whether it's other areas of collaboration. We have multiple medical education partners, and we have a journal of ethical urban living analyzing the crises of the inner city through the lens of academia and not simply the news media. We have a journal of cognition and neuroethics, both of which are partnered with the University of Michigan, where we look at issues of the brain-mind problem and other ethical issues in detail. And again, the idea that this is the language of academia to communicate through these articles, and we've championed that now for years. One of the things that really people wonder about, and I was surprised to say in Chicago, people were particularly interested in, was the Sylvester Broom Empowerment Village. This is a village in which we tutor young kids. I recall when we started how there was little interest, but it appears in Chicago people are very interested in why a medical institution found it important to tutor children. We ended up buying a school that costed us $1. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened the door for us. We renovated it. And going from 2 or 3 people per month, it went to around 700 kids per day, where they would have around 12 hours of programming and around 530 hours of extra time with us. They come to our sports, they come to our journalism, all the fun things. But at the end, we insist that they be in our tutoring. And that way we can help the kids of the inner city, where kids are now getting scholarships to Stanford and to Columbia and to MIT, coming from a city where only 5% of the kids are actually capable of going to the local university after graduating from the local high schools. Again, this is a manifestation of our Islam. Medicine to us as an institution is a manifestation of what we hope we do well, and we try and provide expertise, but it comes from a deeper yearning to interact and help our society. And if this is something that we can do as an institution, then we would champion this as well. We've had so many partners where millions of dollars are being poured into our programs now, where initially it was nothing more than our institution, our humble institution, and the Muslim community who paid in the seed money. And now millions upon millions of dollars are being given to us from people from all different backgrounds. In this context, we came into Chicago. And in Chicago, it was astonishing to us as a team to see Mercy falling apart, given its history, knowing how important it was to the Bronzeville community, understanding the lay of the land, and just not understanding why in such a beautiful city and in such a wonderful community that this hospital could be allowed to die. And I recall just post-Eid in August of 2020, sending a text message, which I've preserved, to my chief strategy officer, saying that, go ahead and buy Mercy. And he asked me what to offer. I said $1. So that was a little bit of a joke. And fast forward, 10 months later, they accepted our offer. And when they accepted the offer, it was for $1. It wasn't $1 in debt. All debt was removed from the asset. So 100% we achieved the purchase for $1, including the equipment, the CONs and licenses, as well as the physical assets and the operational side of what was happening. So I found that there was multiple layers of problems along the way, where there's regulatory issues, there's public hearings, there's problem after problem. I can probably name 100 or 200 problems, each of which should have stopped this deal from going forward. But at every stage, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened some door, some way of allowing it to continue, even when I didn't want to. Even when I and our team was saying, you know what, I don't know that we should be doing this, the risk is high, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala erased that problem from us. We, as a simple example, when we discussing it with Trinity, they had $177 million of debt on the asset. And they said, of course, we'll sell it for $1, but you have to take over the debt. We said, we can't do that. We're not Trinity. We're not that multi-billion-dollar company. So in literally hours, they wiped that clause out, saying, no, we'll take care of the debt. We'll pay for everything. You can start at zero. So subhanAllah, when I look at the barriers and the difficulties which were completely erased from us, I stopped being concerned. The last elements of the difficulties, I said, you know what? No matter what I do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to push this project forward. So when we had difficulties with the city in negotiations, or we had problems with other elements of the variety of hearings, at every stage, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened the door and erased it, meaning to say almost to me that this is a project now that was more or less meant to exist. So coming into Insight Chicago now, which again, we don't look at this as something that just started the day we walked into Chicago. You know, we look at it as something which the Sisters of Mercy, with all the love the Catholic sisters have had for the community, pouring that into this institution, we're now the ones who are going to be carrying it forward. We don't pretend to be the ones who started it, but the idea now that it's now in our hands. And so on June 1st, when we walked into the hospital and we began our activities there, it was not an equity deal, but an asset deal, meaning to say that we picked out assets that we would keep, and then that would leave certain liabilities on Trinity. So we moved into the hospital literally like passing a baton. Not that we took over a working entity, but we are now restarting the entity as of June 1st. And at midnight we started. You know, I was highly concerned about the emergency room, which was functional, patients on the ward, and so on. And subhanAllah, it went beautiful. We had physicians that were of Islamic background and those of other backgrounds, other faith backgrounds, literally coming to the hospital at midnight, at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and you know, providing whatever support was necessary. We had a Chinese patient that was admitted, and we had maybe 10 physicians rounding on that one patient, the first patient admitted to the hospital. And it was very fascinating and very amazing to feel that energy. Anyone who was there for that first week would have just, I think you could cut the energy, you know, just with a knife, just how excited everyone was to be in a position now that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us to do something of this nature. Speaking, you know, to the spiritual side of this, I recall a dua of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he invokes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in tahajjud. And it's such a deep, deep dua for me that it makes me reflect a little bit, even deeply, about this project. And the wording is very deep and profound in Arabic, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he invokes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he says, Allahumma anta ahaqqu man ubid, wa ahaqqu man dhukir, wa ahaqqu man a'ta, wa ajwadu man su'il, wa arfa'u man malik. أنت الملك لا شريك لك والفرد لا تهلك كل شيء هالك إلا وجهك. He's invoking Allah, saying, you're the most generous and you're the most giving and you're the one who takes care of the world. There is no one like you. We worship you. And he continues to invoke Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until he comes to this very earth-shattering, I would say, sentence where he says, لن تطاع إلا بإذنك. That, Ya Allah, that you will never ever be obeyed. Not that you cannot, but that you will never be obeyed except by your permission. وَلَمْ تُعْصَى إِلَّا بِعِلْمِكَ. And you won't be disobeyed except by your knowledge. The idea that even our ability to do something good, even our being put into position to potentially help and those people around us, even that, it's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the opportunity to. How many people can go through life where they're not in a position to potentiate such healing and such good? Coming into this community in Chicago and seeing what would have happened if someone did not take that hospital. And we, right till the end of our hearings, we were saying, we were inviting that if another university or hospital wants to take this hospital that can do it better than us, please go ahead and do it. We are happy to partner and work. But somehow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made our team feel that this is not a difficult problem, whereas the people around us felt it was very difficult to do. moving forward now from June 1st forward, alhamdulillah, we're hitting our stride. We have a very busy emergency department. We are moving very rapidly towards all the different services that are necessary. Full behavioral health unit exists. Our ICU is running very well. Our medical surgical floors, of course, the emergency department. We have emergency obstetrics coverage. We have our operating rooms running. And we're now moving towards declaration of a comprehensive emergency room. There were thoughts that we would come to Chicago with the idea that we would now hold an asset that we can then sell somehow in the future. But we told them that's not our intention, not as an organization and not as Muslims. Our idea is that we're here for the community to do whatever is necessary and what they need, and that's our intentions. And as we move into these different programs that were necessary, alhamdulillah, I would say that we're hitting our marks far earlier than expected. I don't believe that anyone, particularly from the government, felt that we would be able to declare a comprehensive emergency room so quickly, but they've already given us the authority to do that as of September 1st. So we're moving towards producing all these different elements and subspecialties that are required to make this an exceptional hospital. Not, again, as an institution or as a Muslim, is it acceptable to us to do anything but excellent care and service, whether on the clinical platform or on the research platform, or even on the financial platform. It's very interesting to see how much focus our Prophet ﷺ had on financial solvency. He was the first man to declare that the market was set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has no place in regulating supply and demand. He was the one who increased the market by these principles that even Adam Smith did not propose until 1,000 years later. Our Prophet ﷺ was the one who initiated the idea of the waqf, which was the precursor to the corporation that could independently stand and build. He was the one who instituted zakah, such that all people of all backgrounds poverty would be erased. The financial focus our Prophet ﷺ had on creating solvency and perpetuity for his projects led to Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anh making a donation that till today in Medina you see his garden giving food and fruit to the Hujjaj that come. Our deen is about our sustainability. So it's not simply that we come to do good work and feel good on a volunteer or altruistic level, but this has to be a sustainable project. In that light, this is a 501c3. It is a charitable project, and it is a safety net hospital. What that means is that we take all patients, whether they be of poor insurance or non-insurance, and our threshold, our percentages are so high that it makes it hard to sustain on a financial level unless one is innovative in how one achieves sustainability. So right now we're working very hard in a variety of different planes to make that reality come true. But alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also made that easy for us. So this hospital now is solvent, it's standing firm. There's much good that's coming out of it, and our growth plans are significant. And we're hoping that with time this becomes something which is a very massive fixture in Chicago. One of the important elements of our leadership is we have a chief empowerment officer, much like what we did in Flint and the Michigan area. And we want to institute the idea of tutoring children with our multiple programs. And as they come to us for sports and all the other things that we intend to implement, we are going to insist that they also be in our tutoring. And we also want to see them thrive and see the American dream. It's one thing to see the people around us suffering from some of the injustices, historical injustices that have led them to where they are. But why should there be ongoing disparities? And why should there be ongoing imbalances in their ability to access the full economic and intellectual power of America? And this is what I think is one of our responsibilities, to elevate and to empower people such that they too can access the beauty of this country. Again, I would end with this one conceptual idea that we as Muslims are told that our purpose on this planet, our purpose on earth, is to help establish qist. And qist in Arabic means justice. But there's two words that are used in Arabic for justice. One is adl and one is qist. And when we talk about adl, we talk about balance. You talk about taking a rope and putting it over the back of a camel and making sure both sides are weighed properly so that one doesn't fall. So, a judge sees a case, he looks at both sides of the evidence, he renders an opinion, but that opinion can be incorrect. That's adl would have been achieved though. But qist is different. Qist is a justice which is all encompassing. The actual correct thing happens. It's not simply an utter manifestation of an attempt at being balanced, but it is the actual achievement of justice. And those elements are mentioned in the books of Maqasid, which all the way from Ibn Ashur to Imam al-Shatibi, Imam Ghazali, and Juwayni, they talk about the 5 elements that make up qist. There's protection of creed, there's protection of life, protection of intellect, protection of progeny and family, and protection of wealth. And these are deep discussions that lead into the idea that this is what justice really is, a just society. It's not simply a society that is just based upon criminal law, but just on the idea that there's a social justice, there's equity, there is parity. People of all faiths and backgrounds and civilizations are benefiting. This is truly what this community, our Muslim community, was meant to be. People who push this idea of qist and justice. So people, Muslims including, think that, okay, qist will be achieved in the hereafter. Dr. Shah, that's why we're here, and in the hereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge and that will be achieved. But they misunderstand the verse in the Quran in Surah Hadid, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلَنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. That all these messengers and books were sent so human beings stand up in qist. And this type of justice is not achieved by external law, but by changing of the hearts. And when hearts with pure intentions and pure ethics comes forward, then you see a different day rise on humanity. And that's really what I'm hoping, to a small degree, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I hope that we have some glimmer of that in these activities now that we've initiated in Chicago. And we ask for your du'as and your support, that maybe inshallah we can manifest Islam through these activities. Jazakumullah khairan.
All right, we have a few questions, Jazakallah, for that, and my own personal reflection, and from talking to people in the community, Muslims want to be of service to their fellow man. I think a lot of us have felt that we're playing it safe, we're in our bubbles, whether it's Naperville, Oak Brook, wherever you are, you're in your bubble and you're not affecting society at large. So, like I said, a lot of excitement in this project. If you think about some of the most underserved communities in the United States, you think of Flint, you think of Chicago, Ferguson, East St. Louis. So, alhamdulillah, very, very inspirational to hear this. We're going to go to a few questions. We have about 4 or 5, so depending on your time, we should try to get through these kind of fast. The grand opening was very intentional, and there's some pictures circulating in the CMMA group. Some of our local community leaders were there, Ustad Ubaidullah Evans and some other leaders. What was your intent, and what do you see as the opportunity there in terms of involving the local community?
What was our intent for? I didn't catch the last part of the question.
What was the intent of getting the local community involved? Is opportunity there as well?
The intent of getting the local and community involved was that that we felt that this is not really our project. I feel that that this hospital, it says na'khudh bil asbab. So it's one thing to rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you have to do what you have to do. People are needed. So the local Muslim physicians and community outside of the physicians were incredibly helpful to us. The CMMA group, starting with Dr. Tajammul Hussain, were unbelievably helpful to us. Just coming and saying, look, what do you need? Coming to round, covering the hospital, offering to cover the surgical services. Like the outpouring of support we got from the Muslim physicians was unbelievable. Until today, they continue to support, doing whatever is necessary. You'll have, physicians volunteering to see patients without pay. There's so many different things that we're seeing now that the physicians are being involved in. So our outreach and our idea was that this is not Insight's project. We look at it almost as if we're like a bit of a catalyst. And so again, Muslim physicians, but also Christian, Jewish, Hindu, you name it, they come forward, and it's a very beautiful thing, brothers and sisters, when all those, even not only race but religious barriers are broken. Our Prophet ﷺ, that's what he did when he brought the peninsula together. It was not the Muslims alone that came under the banner of a multicultural, multi-faith, and this such a beautiful thing to sit with a Hindu brother and sister or a Jewish brother and sister, and all that anger and negativity to go away and to come together in these kinds of work. So we definitely felt it was important for us to reach to everyone and to bring them together to help with this project.
Wow, subhanAllah. That's good to hear. One more question we have from one of the CMMA members, Bashir Khazi. What is your vision for graduate medical education? Any consideration creating a collaboration / affiliation with US-based medical schools?
Yeah, so we have currently applied for 100 residency positions. I'm hoping by June of this coming year. So we've initiated the approach because of the historical place where the hospital was. Where we're hoping that can happen. We're confident, inshallah, that in 2 years we would have the positions secured. Once we have our GME program running, then of course that allows us to grow into multiple subspecialties, and that is our intent, that it becomes a full teaching hospital, not only for residents but for medical students and so on. We feel it's inevitable that the hospital and what we're doing is going to grow into what you're saying, medical school and other teaching facilities, not only medicine but business, science, and so on. So we have a very full intention to be involved in that milieu, even if it means creating our own university. So all of those are possibilities, and not only possibilities, but probabilities, and they're within our vision now as to what we think we have to do with the hospital.
We have another question from Junaid Ahmed. What is your message to the youth or others in medicine who want to use Islam and medicine for dawah or to get to help their community?
What is my advice to the youth, you think?
Yes. What is your message or advice to the youth or others in medicine who want to use Islam and medicine for dawah or to help their community?
You know, America, in my opinion, you know, there's almost nothing more important to them than the healthcare of the population, which is true. You know, our health, how people are impressed by, you know, bricks and mortar and cars and this and that and so on, but how expensive and how important it is to have a working eyesight and speech and so on. So there's nothing more important to this community than good healthcare. Our Muslim physicians and trainees coming now, new students, should understand several things about our deen. That this is a team sport. You're not a physician that comes in memorizing multiple papers and spewing out knowledge and thinking that just that's enough to do good medicine. Running a team properly, using your ethics to build the nurses and those around you, such that you can all deliver care. This is a critical part of leadership and to deliver proper care. I think that, you know, as young Muslims going into the medical fields, to understand how critical it is to the community to have not only smart and intelligent people, but loving people. I cannot tell you, I think many physicians understand what I'm saying, where people become jaded and they all of a sudden are looking at people through the wrong lens, whether it be because of their socioeconomic status and perhaps their color, all sorts of different reasons to not treat them with respect. And this is not our deen. It's not acceptable to our Prophet. So taking all the ethics and all those learnings and all those elements of khuluq and behavior and character and putting it into ourselves and letting that manifest, people will love it. They'll love a behavior. And it's simply, as I said, if you really embrace this one thing of everything that I said, love your patients, just love them. And if you do, you will read, you will think, your surgeries will be better, you'll care for them better, you'll expect more from your staff. You know, think about how you would treat your mother. So I'm hoping now, the Muslims currently, we're around 10% of the physicians in the country, which is far more than our percentage in the country, the general population. We have a massive presence in perhaps the most important thing in the minds of Americans, which is healthcare. We need to be involved. And not only that, outside of specifically the issue of healthcare, our voices are heard in terms of social justice and so on and so forth. We cannot be living in these cocoons, nor would I would say to the medical student, Muslim medical student of the future, don't simply look inside at what our community needs. Our community's needs are subordinate to the wider community. What we want to do is achieve what we can for the wider community. We'll sacrifice our own efforts, our own time, our own wealth in order to make it better for those around us.
Wow, inspiring words. I love that word, and I hope everyone takes this to the bank. Cocoons. We cannot be in our cocoons, because I feel that is a big problem, myself included. So we must look at our greater society at large. One more question we have from Munawar Izhar. How would you like CMMA and Muslims in general to help you in your endeavor?
You know, we feel the dua of the brothers and sisters. We feel it, and the desire to see us succeed. We feel it in every interaction that we have. So that means a ton to our team. Like, it means a lot to us to see that kind of energy and so on. Coming to Chicago, I thought nobody would care. It's a bankrupt hospital. It's, nobody wants it. So I remember walking off the plane with a couple of my colleagues and going to the first public hearing, and Atif, who is the chief strategy officer, told me, he said, "You ready for the show?" I said, "What show? How is it going to be a show? Nobody cares." I come, there's like 1,000 people waiting for us, and newspaper articles and people taking pictures. And I said, this is very different than what we experienced in Michigan in terms of the community, and it's an extremely connected community in Chicago. So I sort of lost my train of thought a little bit there, thinking back to those days.
The question, I think, was, how would you like CMMA and Muslims in general to help with you?
There you go.
Yeah.
So the idea now that we definitely need help. Advice. There's very excellent physicians that are joining our staff, either as part of Insight staff physicians and joining the medical staff as well. They're giving us advice. They're helping us organize the staff and the ORs. They're sending us patients. So all of those are different ways that can help us significantly. And even telling us our flaws. When there's problems and issues, we'd love to hear what are those issues, because it's a monumental task to take over this center, the physical building and plant. So we're still growing and growing into ourselves, but also dealing with some of the cultural mistakes, I would say, and practices of the past in the hospital. We're trying to rectify them, being real about what we have to do to correct personnel and processes.
All right. From Jawad Hussain, how do you envision outpatient services in your organization, i.e. primary care services, which are usually the most needed services at the grassroots level?
Yes, so our functionality primarily is a hospital. We have inpatient focus because that's what we differently than, I would say, others. But the outpatient part of what we do will affect far more lives. So we have every intention of growing, into a significant primary care services across Bronzeville, but across the city as well. And so we are looking at innovative ways to integrate primary care physicians, because they're really the beginning of everything. They're the ones who will be the frontline people that are taking care of patients and ultimately then helping us grow as an institution. So we are actively working towards models to integrate good physicians into our programs and practices. And so we're quite excited about that. And we're just getting started. But with time, our plans will be more known. But the idea is, yes, we would like to have a very strong and massive primary care base.
Okay. We'll probably do 3 more questions, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
We got Adnan Lakhani from Houston. How can other Muslims in other cities follow in the footsteps of this effort in Chicago?
As I was saying to you guys, that I think that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't believe that the vast majority of what happened had anything to do with me or us as an institution. And so I think that if the intention is there to do good for the community, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open doors. And when it comes to the safety net hospitals across the country, I do believe we have a big, big role in that. Big role in doing that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to practice medicine, get paid, plus do wonderful work for our community. And across this country, there's hundreds of hospitals that are now in trouble. And it would be wonderful to see our community jump in and take over and do these things. But it doesn't come with that expertise. The teams that are needed to do this, the CEOs, COOs, CFOs, these are very exceptional people. We need more of that within our community. It's not simply just being a good physician. What about those expert business people that know how to make things solvent? So all of these different elements are needed. So what I would say is that we need to just be involved. Muslims should be involved at every level of advocacy, of every level of administration, and then of course see the opportunity now to do good, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open the door. But should we be more involved? We don't have to have a hospital that says Muslim hospital, but to be involved in a hospital, in the workings of the hospital, to help elevate the different programs and practices, and to just pour out everything inside you, about sacrifice and generosity of time and wealth. People will be astonished when they see all those ethics coming from young Muslims.
SubhanAllah. And if you think of us demographically, that's going to make our imprint even bigger, if we're trying to show what our deen really is. We have another question here. What was the spark that led to doing this type of work?
The spark was our Prophet *sallallahu I cannot, I don't know how to couch my answer more than that. He was, all of the prophets. What did they teach us? And what was the differentiating factor from one prophet to the others? How much they cared about their community. Our Prophet *sallallahu always cared about the community around him. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. That if you look at the old books, animals were triaged to the Muslim emergency rooms. They were given care if they had a heart attack. So the idea that it's not just human society, it's the animal kingdom, it's the plant kingdom. Our Prophet ﷺ brought mercy to the plants. I can give you a lecture about how much he cared about the individual plants, not just the environment as people talk about. So our Prophet ﷺ was just a manifestation of mercy and of love. And if anyone who fairly looks at his life and what he did, sallallahu sometimes it makes me feel that we, I think back and I say, what would our Prophet sallallahu do at this era in America, given the disparities and problems and the issues? Where would he be in terms of the work that he would do?
SubhanAllah, I think that's a good place to stop our conversation for today. I know a lot of people were asking for your email address or somebody they could get updates or anything like that. Is there any place they can go to keep up or try to reach out?
Yeah, we're of course our website is keeping things kind of up to date. We're a little bit behind in sort of updating some elements of what we were doing, but that's one place. Me personally, definitely you can reach out to me. I can say my email. It's Dr. Shah at iinn.com. That's drshah@iinn.com. That is my personal email, so I check it, but not always, as much as I can. But that's where one can get a hold of me, and of course, phoning the hospital or in Michigan, our numbers, which are on the website. I would, if there's something I can do to encourage people, particularly young Muslims, to really embrace who we are and to manifest things through our activities. الفعل, they say in قاعدة in أصول الفقه, الفعل أبلغ دلالة من القول. That action is stronger evidence than the words, even of our Prophet ﷺ. What he did is stronger evidence for a fiqhi opinion than a word that he spoke. Let us do our work. We don't need to talk. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Who says a better word than someone who does good work? It's paradoxical. You do good work. أعمال الصالحات وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين, that you call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you do good work, you tell people this is what motivated me, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. That is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equates with the word. So let's be those people, agents of change, agents of good, and let our activities and our actions speak to who we are.
Let's get it, everyone. Let's think new, think outside the box, and think big, inshallah, to make our societies better. Jazakallah, Dr. Shah, for joining us. We're going to close with a dua. ربنا آتينا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك يا جلال والإكرام إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما وسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Jazakallah for joining, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.